What if the key to a great retirement lies in the non-obvious? We're going to dig into that today with a case study from a familiar couple, Dwight and Angela. Yes, that Dwight. He's finally ready to leave Dunder Mifflin. We're going to walk through some of their desires for understanding what they may be missing. And to do so, we're going to walk through a formula that we found in the book Non-Obvious Thinking by Rohit Bhargava. Now, in this book, he uses a formula called the SIFT framework. And basically, it's an acronym for breaking down 4 different ways to analyze a situation. And in this case, we're looking at retirement. The 4 different areas are space, insight, focus, and twist. And we're going to provide some examples of the way that Dwight and Angela can think through this in each of these stages. And I'd also encourage you to check out the book. There's a lot of different examples in the book that are non-financial. He even uses it and kicks off the book with an example from the movie Ready Player One, which is one of my favorites. And I don't want to spoil it for you. So Allison is with us today, and I am Chad Smith. So Allison, why don't you kick us off with some of the thoughts in that first stage and as we introduce our couple here?
Yes. And when we think about Dwight and Angela, they are fairly set in their ways. I would say they're a couple that is both very firm in their beliefs, not super flexible, right? Maybe they don't see other people's point of views. They don't appreciate different perspectives versus their own. So we can see this SIFT framework could be very beneficial for them to broaden their horizons about what might be possible with their retirement strategies. So the first one, space. How Dwight and Angela achieved this was they made an oasis moment. So they took a weekend away from the beet farm. They got away. Maybe they went back to Niagara Falls where they went for Jim and Pam's wedding, just to take a refuge from the usual noise and chaos of the everyday, allowing for reflection and open-mindedness. So we find this can be really helpful for couples or anyone preparing for retirement, just to take a break, to get away and think about what it really is that you're trying to achieve. Ask yourself why multiple times and gain more clarity on what it is that you want to look for in your retirement picture and what things you might be missing. So some other ways that you can do this aside from getting away from your day-to-day is control your breathing, right? A lot of times just taking deep breaths, controlling your breathing can help you notice things around you that your mind has told you are unimportant because you're used to looking at them. So when you start paying attention to your breath, you can break that pattern of ignoring some of those things that are around you. In addition, the weak tie theory is an idea that was first introduced by sociologist Mark Granovetter in a paper called The Strength of Weak Ties in 1973. And essentially this argues that in some situations, such as discovering new ideas or finding a new job, acquaintances outside of your usual social circle can be far more helpful than your inner circle of close friends and family. And multiple research studies have confirmed this conclusion over the years. So for Dwight, he might want to think about talking to someone other than Mose and Michael. You know, maybe he reconnects with Phyllis or even Toby, who were not his best friends, but maybe they can offer him some new perspectives or ways of thinking. For Angela, you know, maybe that's getting away from the cats and reconnecting with Oscar or even Daryl or Kelly, you know, who was not her favorite person, but maybe offers her a new perspective and they can think about what they might want to do differently or what they might want to do next. In this, I think, too, in terms of a weak tie, maybe that's a financial advisor or a professional in the field who might know some new questions to ask that you haven't considered yet.
Yes. So let's set the stage here, right, for where they're at and some of the thoughts that they've been thinking about. So they're in their late 50s. They're thinking they're 5 years from retirement. They've been maxing out their 401ks, but they haven't reevaluated their plan in years. So they're feeling a little lost and not sure if they're on the right path. They feel set overall, but they're just not sure, and they're worried about taxes, healthcare, overall market volatility of how that's impacting their nest egg that they've saved. And so at this point, like you said, they're taking this space, but they give themselves a weekend away from their daily life to brainstorm their ideal retirement. Funny enough, we've used that on the podcast a time or two. hopefully to ask these big questions that they're wrestling with about money, taxes, and lifestyle, the lifestyle that they want in retirement before meeting with their advisor.
Yes, I think that can be really helpful to gain some clarity before you meet with an advisor. And then once you are meeting with an advisor, hopefully they can provide some additional insight for you and some things to think about for you. So that's step 2 in our process here. How to increase your odds of uncovering new insights is, one, to ask story questions. And this is something that when working with a financial advisor, if you're working with a fee-only advisor, someone who's a fiduciary and has been experienced, they should know the right questions to ask you and to dig deeper on certain experiences that you might have had that can help you uncover new insights that can open either new strategies for your situation or new paths that you might want to pursue in your pre-retirement and retirement journey. Another item here you can think about is, they call it hone your nunchi, which is part of Korean culture. And that just means being able to gauge the unspoken thoughts, feelings, and intentions of others, and can help you open new layers of meaning that others often miss. So again, we're slowing down, we're paying attention to more things than maybe just the article that we recently read in Money Magazine, or the typical strategies that we think of, like maxing out our 401k and our Roth IRAs. And being in the right room with other people who can inspire you, right? So showing up and being present, looking for more face-to-face perspective shifting conversations. And then considering the perspectives and pursuits of maybe people that are quite different from you. So Dwight and Angela, they're living on that beet farm. Maybe they want to go talk to some dairy farmers, or they really want to get out of their comfort zone and talk to people in the technology industry, not so much paper and outdoor focused. So those might be some things for them to consider. And then working with a financial advisor, maybe they uncover some different things, like maybe Dunder Mifflin has added the mega backdoor Roth option in their 401k, and they hadn't considered doing that before.
Yes. So in this insight stage, it's all about noticing and connecting hidden opportunities, right? So in these conversations, you're reviewing the plan, carefully asking these new questions. And we picked out 3 that we typically see in these situations that people may not have thought about or may not have been using because they've read a lot and they've seen different things. They may not think they're able to do certain things. So one that we've talked about in other episodes is that mega backdoor Roth in the 401k. Now, this is additional savings on top of what you can save either pre-tax or just in a Roth 401k portion. So that's something we'll want to talk through, and we'll link how to look through that and think about using that opportunity for you, or asking your employer if you can use that. Or if you're working with an advisor, asking your advisor. It's certainly one we talk through with clients and help them execute and implement that. Also, potentially, we've talked a lot about tax loss harvesting here on the show in different episodes, but sometimes in early retirement, when you have that retirement window, if it's pre-Social Security, you have opportunities to harvest capital gains at lower tax rates, tax gain harvesting. So that's a unique spin on things that people often don't consider when they're thinking about that window of opportunity. And then if they have 5 years left until retirement, they may not have been maxing the HSA opportunity, that health savings account, right? Because they're now in a high deductible plan. They have this new opportunity, and people, there's a couple steps to doing this. Often people will be saving potentially in an HSA, but it's still surprising that you have to do another step to actually invest those funds to keep them growing at a rate that's higher, so that it can be tax-free growth and then tax-free withdrawals down the road. So those are just 3 that we would think about in the insight stage of thinking of these hidden opportunities.
Yes, and these are 2, the mega backdoor Roth and the HSA are ones that I find people often get wrong, or they think they're maxing out, but then we look at the pay stub, we look at the W-2, we look at the tax return, and they're not actually maxing those out. So I hear that all the time. People say, oh, I'm maxing out my 401k. Then I look at their W-2 and their pay stub, they're not maxing out their 401k. So, getting another perspective, having a professional review these things with you and make sure can help you take advantage of opportunities that you might otherwise miss.
as we move into our third stage, I'll just introduce this idea of the focus area, right? On choosing what to prioritize. So I know we have some different thoughts on this and resources, right?
Yes. And this one, I mean, fabulous quote from Charlie Munger here. Our job is to find a few intelligent things to do, not to keep up with every damn thing in the world. And I come back to that sometimes, kind of reminds me of Michael Scott, keep it simple, stupid. Always correct, always hurts my feelings. One of those things. There's such a, world of information now. There's so much information there. There's so much that you can find about saving for retirement, investing, what is the right thing to do. It's very easy to get overwhelmed. So finding focus, making sure you're solving the right problem, and pinpointing a common element among all these ideas that you're considering can help you zero in on the bigger picture. And then learning to appreciate when an idea is good enough instead of always seeking more options. And we saw in a book a few years ago, Barry Schwartz's The Paradox of Choice basically shows that more choices can diminish our happiness and increase anxiety. So a lot of times people might seem to be maximizing their life or they're optimizing. Unfortunately, sometimes this ends up with a decision that might be objectively better, but people could struggle to be happy with it once they've made that choice. They keep questioning if they made the right choice. So in this focus stage, it can be helpful to really focus on your financial plan, your life, what's appropriate for you, and fight back against the tyranny of overwhelming choices. We had an article recently that came across my desk, and we'll link to it in the show notes, called Optimizing Ourselves to Death. And we think about that right now. There's just so much technologies. There's so much we can do. We can wear the Oura ring. We can have our sleep monitored. We can, make sure we're getting the right nutrition. And this isn't always making us happier. So we want to optimize our financial plans to the greatest extent possible, and then know that we've made the right choices for us, and then live our lives. And working with a collaboration partner, working with a financial advisor or someone else you trust, and knowing who you can trust, who's got your best interest at heart, can help you feel more peace of mind once you've made those decisions.
Yes, and I would say the prioritizing of the recommendations that you might get from a plan from an advisor is an important aspect, because when you're going over a plan and reviewing it, you can get excited. I hope you get excited. As advisors, we get excited about giving you a lot of opportunities that you can implement. But I think we see some confusion many times if people are trying to do it on their own. It can just become overwhelming and they're not sure where to start. Like you said, Allison, some people think they're maxing out, but amounts change, ranges change, things you can do, amounts change on ages sometimes. So it's important to prioritize these things and carve out time to take advantage of them. But in our scenario here with Dwight and Angela, of course, we first want to tackle that mega backdoor Roth, right? That if you got 5 years until retirement, you're likely in your highest earning years. You've got this, massive savings opportunity where you can build more tax-free wealth. And that's one that you really want to look into and understand if that's an opportunity through an employer.
And when we're thinking about that, uncovering, gaining a new insight with Dwight and Angela in particular, we can think Angela's an accountant, right? Her income is probably fairly stable. She's probably a salaried employee. Dwight might have a more irregular income. He's a salesman, right? He might have, big income some months, zero income the next. And I find a lot of times in couples like this, it can be difficult for one party to really take advantage of some of these opportunities and maybe max out that 401k because they feel like it makes their paycheck too small, or to add those mega backdoor Roth contributions because those are after tax. So they're decreasing your income dollar for dollar. And a lot of times your paycheck is going to be very small. So thinking outside the box, and maybe if you have savings at the bank or you have a brokerage account built up, maybe this is a good time to utilize some of those funds to supplement your regular income so that you can build a better tax efficient strategy for the long term. So thinking outside the box, shifting from that paycheck to paycheck to more of a abundance wealth building mentality can be helpful here.
Yeah, and maybe the garden party business really took off for Dwight by using the beet farm, right? So he might have another opportunity to save in a separate 401k through his business. So there can be many different opportunities that you're evaluating in these conversations, but often if you're busy in your daily activities, it can be hard to find these areas to focus on them. So the other two that we had mentioned previously, right? You would go to after taking advantage of that first opportunity. Then you'd look at the HSA, right? And see if you can invest anything there through your employer and make that grow a little better. And then also think about your brokerage account third, that capital gain harvesting idea. Maybe you let those gains, try to not sell things potentially in that account and wait to do it at a lower tax rate. Of course, you don't want to let the tax tail wag the investment dog there, but that is an opportunity that you're still trying to juggle and evaluate as you're focusing in on the best things to do. So as we're moving into our fourth area here, and this is the T in SIFT, right? We're looking at the twist aspect. So this is where you get creative. You're making it a little more out of the ordinary. Potentially, you're thinking about it differently and actionable. That's the most important thing in this stage to make things happen.
Yeah, the twist is where the magic happens. So as you said, Chad, that's where, Dwight transitions the beet farm into hosting events, right? Maybe there's a new idea, third option that you hadn't considered yet. We can think about this, maybe try something backwards or opposite from what you're doing. And this can be fairly easy to do when you have a financial plan in place. We can run a quick scenario to show you what would that look like? What would alternative scenarios look like? And then look for that third option. A lot of times when we're thinking about retirement kind of in the most bleak terms, really there's two outcomes. It's binary. One, the money outlives you, which is the scenario we want, right? That's the better one. Second option is you outlive your money. But what are the other options? What are the other things that could happen? And thinking outside of just those two options can help you arrive at a more nuanced, original third outcome that others might not be able to imagine. For example, maybe that means building generational wealth. Maybe that means helping your grandchildren achieve their dreams of going to college. Maybe that means supporting charities beyond your life, setting up a donor-advised fund, doing some things that maybe you didn't anticipate earlier because you were really concerned about outliving your money. So thinking about what might be possible with money versus just, achieving that first outcome, money outlives you, and avoiding the second.
Yeah, in our scenario here with Dwight and Angela, this is where they're bringing it all together, right? They're making a coordinated plan. And some of the things I talked about in the previous example, it's really about the implementation aspect. Looking at that mega backdoor Roth and aggressively funding it for the next 5 years, right? Creating an early retirement bridge fund to take some of that tax, the stress around paying taxes out of the equation, or making it easier, more digestible pre-Social Security. And then the HSA, of course, using that as a future, you could call it healthcare annuity, right? You could have this tax-free growth, really a medical Roth IRA sitting there to use at some point in the future, maybe even for something else if you've had enough expenses up to that point. Now, we've had episodes on all of these topics, but we wanted to weave a few together today in this framework to just demonstrate how conversations typically go when we're meeting with people in the beginning and or with our current clients with annual reviews. We might spot different opportunities as tax legislations change. That's a twist, right? That you bring into the situation that opens up new opportunities that you weren't aware of before, obviously. So it's about finding the right cadence for how you can actually get from idea generation to implementation. And we thought this was a creative way to think about it, and really enjoyed the book. There's a lot of different examples in the book that they use as well from areas outside of the financial realm, but we wanted to relate it back to what you listened to us for here on the show. Any closing thoughts there, Allison?
Yeah, I would say finally in that twist theme, rethink what you think will never change. We hear a lot that the price of NVIDIA is never going to go down, or this company's never going to go out of business. I'll never stop buying from Amazon. And while those things may be true, maybe they're not things that are going to serve your financial plan long term. So rethinking what kind of contingency plans you might want to put in place. Rethinking that Dwight's always going to be able to do the manual labor on his beet farm, right? That might not always be the case. Maybe you might need to put some contingency plans in place, make sure that you have trusted partners around you who can help you continue making good decisions as you shift further into retirement, and look out for your best interest and your long-term family plan, wealth generation as that passes down to your heirs.
Absolutely. So hope this idea was helpful. We plan to apply this potentially to some other case studies as well in future shows, just to demonstrate how you might think through those, because there's, as you know, many things, endless really amounts of problems, questions, opportunities that come to us when we're thinking about our wealth building journey. As always, love your feedback. Thank you for sending that. Continue to send that along. If you have other show topics, you can add those in a little email to us at any point, and we look forward to talking to you again in 2 weeks.